on Friday, the 29th of November, and it is in accordance therewith. We are now meeting as the Standing Committee on Education, and we are dealing with vote 5 of being education, and this is within the schedule of the Western Cape Adjustment Appropriation Bill, being B2 of 2024. And this is a meeting that's being held virtually via Microsoft Teams. I would therefore like to welcome all the honourable members, the Minister, the Head of Department of the Western Cape Education Department, and all the officials. I think for purposes of the record and of the opening, in welcoming everyone, I think we will just give all of the honourable members the opportunity to record their names. I'm Leon van Wyk, the chairperson of the Education Committee. I noticed that there is some microphone that is open at this stage. I think if everyone could just shut down their microphones when they are not speaking. And I think I then hand over to committee members.
Chair, I'm Thomas Walters, a member of the committee.
And good morning, everybody. I'm Member Boyson. I'm a member of the committee. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Rachel Van Voorval. I'm an alternative member of this committee.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Donita Stevens. I'm a member of this committee. Thank you.
Chairperson Ferlin Christians, a member of this committee.
Good morning, Chairperson Wendy Kaiser-Philander, committee member.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. I also just wish to note that Honourable Member Sayed has rendered his apologies for today, and accordingly his alternate member, Bernd Voorval, is sitting in today. I notice Member Heron.
Just to record, I'm not a member of the committee, but I am present. Thank you.
Good morning, Member Heron. I then want to welcome Minister David Maynier to the meeting, and then I will hand over to him to record his attendance and that of HOT Brent Walters.
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning to the honourable members of the committee. I'm joined by Brent Walters and several senior officials from the Department of Education, and they will introduce themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson. My name is Brent Walters, Head of Education. You can ask Mr. Eli and Mr. Mayor to introduce, and then the others. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson. Leon Eli, CFO of Education. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson. Juan Benjamin, Chief Director Curriculum.
Good morning, Chairperson. Ian De Vega, Chief Director, Business Intelligence Management.
Morning, Chairperson. Matthijs Cronje, Chief Director, People Management Practices.
Good morning, Chair and the members. Zuksani MPC, Acting Chief Director, Financial Management.
Good morning, Chairperson. Jerome Gordon, Chief Education Specialist, Infrastructure Planning.
So, Chairperson, I think that's our team.
Thanks very much. Are there any members of the public who wish to introduce themselves? You may go ahead.
Good morning, Chair and members. My name is Mahfouz Rafi. I'm a researcher at Equal Education. I just also want to hand over to my colleague, Daniel Peter Nadaf from Equal Education Law Center.
Thank you very much, Chair. Apologies, I'm still connecting my camera, but I wanted to introduce myself in the meantime. My name is Daniel Peter Nadaf. I'm an attorney at the Equal Education Law Center and here with my colleague Mahfouz. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. As indicated earlier, that we are dealing with this, the matter of the adjustment appropriation bill. And the order of the meeting then today will be to discuss vote 5 on education in the schedule of the Western Cape adjustments appropriation bill. And this is, as indicated, this is also considered to be a public hearing, and there will then be an opportunity for public input. So before us today, we have the on the adjustments appropriation, and I'm accordingly tabling that bill that we have before us. And I want to then immediately hand over to Minister David Mania and to the HOD to make introductory comments, and then if they so wish, and that will then open up any questions that members of the committee may well have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the opportunity to present the 2024-25 adjustments budget, which, as I'm sure honourable members know, increases from about 30.8 billion to 31.3 billion, which is about a 547 million rand in year adjustment. I think what I am particularly pleased about, and we've traversed this issue on several occasions with the committee, is that the adjustments budget provides for an additional allocation of 250 million rand, which is the first tranche.
We seem to have lost sound there, Minister. Not sure, IT, is there any way we can assist the Minister?
Thank you. I do apologize. I had some connectivity issues. As I was saying, that is the first tranche of BFI allocation of 2.5 billion rand for the rapid school build, and I think it signifies National Treasury's confidence in the department's ability to roll out the rapid school build program, which, as honourable members know, its purpose is to build more schools faster, particularly schools serving poor communities in the Western Cape. Thank you. Through you, Chair, over to the Head of Department.
Thank you very much, Minister and Chairperson of the committee and members. Maybe just from my side to just add on to what the Minister has indicated. We've got the 547 million rand budget increase, 250 by PT for relief on COE pressure, and 251 from the BFI, as the Minister has indicated, and then a 70 million rand for disaster recovery. And there are smaller amounts, Chair, that we have transferred out to .P for call center software and to DCAS for things like mod equipment and so on. Small amount of 4.4 million and a small amount of 31 million. So I think that's basically the major shifts inside the budget. And I think that's all we want to say in the opening remarks. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Minister and HOD. And I think what we will then do to deal with this bill is we'll deal with it not quite page by page, but certain categories within the document that we have, and I'm suggesting that we deal with pages 69 and 70 first, which is being flighted right now. And I think, as indicated in the top right-hand corner, members will notice that the increase is 547 million rand, being the net of the various figures that are reflected in these adjusted estimates for our provincial expenditure 2024. I would therefore welcome any questions that we do have, so that if we need to get further explanation. That are raised. I think if I'm not seeing any hands at this point in time, and I'm then accordingly moving on to the details of adjustments that are set out on pages 71 through 79, and that then indicates the various types of adjustments that are being made, which include the shifting of funds and various environments that have been made. And if there are any hands or any questions to be raised, now's your opportunity.
Jefferson?
Yes.
I'm just struggling, or I'm fighting with the new technology. So I wanted to raise my hand earlier, but I could not. So sorry for interrupting. Oh, I figured out, but I will then include that in my question. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I see the member Brett Heron's hand has been raised, so go ahead, Honourable Heron.
Thank you, Chair. Can we just, in pages, the pages that you're currently looking at in the Blue Book, and comparing that to the Minister of Finance's medium-term budget policy statement speech, she addressed the cost of employment pressures that apparently changed from 687 million to 405 million, and that this had been mitigated by the department, leaving a residual risk of 135 million. And the Provincial Treasury allocated 250 million rand to assist with the cost of employment pressures, which I assume addresses the 105 million that the department had as a shortfall, or 135 million as a shortfall. But there's also reference in her speech to an unearmarked 600 million in provincial equitable share within the Western Cape Education Department's infrastructure allocation to provide further manoeuvrability within the department's vote. But I'm not sure where we find that 600 million being reallocated or adjusted within the department's vote. I'm not sure if it is dealt with in up to page 85, but if I'm on the wrong pages, you can rule me out of order. But if I'm in the right pages, can we get an explanation for that shifting of funding and the unearmarking? Thank you.
Fine, thank you, Member Heron. I think it is important there, as indicated, first of all, to look at pages 69 and 70, which is really the executive summary, and then pages 71 through 79. And I'm hoping then that that your question can be dealt with within that. So I think if we can go ahead with your question there, Minister and HOD.
Chairperson, may I ask our CFO to respond to that, please? Mr. Eli?
You go ahead, Mr. Elon.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Just in terms of the questions, yes, the department had a 406 million rand pressure. And to say that the pressure came originally from the fact that we were short funded on the in conditions of service allocation by National Treasury. And then we had to deal with that in terms of obviously the environment aspect today. So 250 million we did receive from Provincial Treasury. And you'll probably see it on page 69, although it's broken up into various parts. But if you look at the other adjustments column, you will see it there as under public ordinary schools, that row there as 138,149,000, and then also under column which refers to early childhood development, you will see the 80 million rand there, 8580. It's in that row. So that's the 250 million that we received from mainly from Provincial Treasury that we've allocated to cost pressures. And then Chairperson, the department then did good within with its own reprisation within its budget, also reflected on pages from pages 71 onwards in terms of the various environments where we've affected savings, where we took funding from the BOT program, the schools of choice, our training interventions, and also the earmarking of the MOT infrastructure as well to cover the shortfall there in terms of the compensation budget in Chairperson for today's purpose. If I can explain the issue around earmarking of infrastructure, it's exactly that. There's no shifting of funding, Chairperson. Normally, Provincial Treasury issues the infrastructure because it's a strategic aspect for us in terms of delivery, and therefore normally Provincial Treasury earmarks that, which means that there's conditions attached to that. We can't use it for anything else. However, when they unearmark it, it means we can use the funding for any other purpose. As explained previously, we've already prioritized other funding, and therefore we didn't utilize that funding for any other purpose. So the funding will still be utilized for infrastructure at this juncture, Chairperson. Yeah, that's just in terms of those particular questions, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Eli. I then see Honourable Binvogel saying.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Chairperson, we note and welcome the 547 million increase in the department's budget, which includes the 321 million from the national government for infrastructure development, and also the 250 million from the Provincial Revenue Fund. However, we are still left with many unanswered questions about the department's reckless decision to cut the 2,407 teaching posts for the 2025 academic year. So the department justifications its decision to cut 200 to 407 teaching posts for 2024 on a so-called 3.8 billion budget for shortfall over the next 3 years. But we still don't know how this figure was calculated and what current shortfall is, what the current shortfall is, or how this budget addressing. Cutting teaching posts is not just reckless, it is an attack on the quality of education and state capacity. Can the Minister and the HOD explain whether they still plan to push ahead with this decision, or has the budget resolved the issues they claim to be facing? Then, Chairperson, on page 71, Program 3, we've noted reprioritization of funds away from independent schools to address the shortfall in compensation of employees. So while this is a drastic decision, we understand the reasoning behind it. However, we believe this approach could go further. Why not reprioritize funds for programs like the School Evaluation Authority? Did the department make any cuts or adjustments to the budget of the School Evaluation Authority, or has its funds remained untouched? And what are the reasons for it? Then lastly, Chair, also on page 72, program 4, I note with concern that the 3.8 million has been shifted from public special schools education to public ordinary schools and ECD. Why were these funds left unspent in specialist schools, and what is the rationale behind redressing them to ECD and public ordinary schools? What is the anticipated impact of this decision? Chair, we note with concern that over 58 million originally earmarked for building schools has been redirected to compensation of employees. While we understand the pressure of cost of living wage agreement, this should not come at the expense of addressing the urgent need for new schools. How did the department justify this decision? Were alternative options such as reducing spending on programs like Back on Track or School Evaluation Authority considered? What are the current budget allocation for these programs? And then page 74, realignment, subprogram 2.2, the learners transport, Chair. The realignment funds for learners transport scheme and leases of school on private properties for subprogram 2.2 to subprogram 2.1 public primary level. To cover the learners transport scheme, in the last ordinary sitting, I raised the issue of the WCED's decision to cancel the learner transport scheme for learners in the Witzenberg and Tilburg, which will leave 396 learners without transport in January. I would like to know if this realignment will benefit these children from poor rural communities. If not, can the department explain why not? Thank you so much, Chair. I will park there.
Thanks very much, Member Van Vogel. I think there's a fairly long list of questions that you have there, and I think let us give the Minister and Department opportunity to answer those, and then on the next round, I will revert to you, Member Heron.
Thank you. Chairperson, may I go ahead?
Certainly, you may go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask the CFO to respond to some of the detailed questions, but I do want to deal with the issue of the reduction in posts, which was raised by the member. Chairperson, it essentially does arise because you cannot give increases to a big sector like ours, in which 80% of the budget is spent on people, that is the teachers and educators and so on, and then you don't fund that. What you're seeing here is an adjustment for the current year, basically, which will take us to March. But I think what the committee must note is that our pressure is not relieved for the MTEF period, because we haven't been funded at the adequate level to be able to get to where we need to get overall. And so we had to take that decision to be able to safeguard the actual going concern, which is the WCD. We had to safeguard it and take an unprecedented decision, Chairperson, because we're not adequately funded by the increases that actually were given. I think that is a very important point, because I do not believe the decision was reckless. I don't agree with that. I'm the accounting officer for this department. We've taken a decision in the interest of maintaining a service, but at the same time not being reckless and not just overspending and doing things that are just going to get us into trouble where we can't actually recover. It's very important to understand that, Chair, because in the end, we have to make sure that we are going concern that actually we can't actually spend more than the budget that is actually allocated to us. And we do know that over time, we have increased posts for the past 6 years. We have explained that to the committee before, in the thousands. I think it's about nearly 3,000 or 4,000 posts. And obviously, we had to take that decision. We don't favor the decision, but we actually had to then trade off where we are to be able to make ourselves viable as an organization. If, for example, Chair, the alternative was that we just go ahead and spend, and then we overspend, I wonder what the committee's view would have been. If we did actually have to overspend, what the committee would have said. They would have accused our department of being irresponsible if we can't actually manage our situations. I think just to say that, and it's not something that we've taken lightly. I think the other point to just be made, Chairperson, this is not something that came on this year. Remember that the first issue is that in the last financial year, we had an unprecedented budget cut in year. So basically, you're on a path, you get told for 3 years, this is what you will spend, and then unprecedented in the middle of that year, basically they say, okay, sorry, we're actually going to cut you. And not only we're going to cut you, in the following year, we're going to give an increase, we don't actually fund the increase. So I think I wanted to make that point because I think it's worthwhile making that point. And I'm going to ask Mr. Eli to talk maybe to the detail, but I do want to say that some of the programs that have been mentioned, like BOT and so on, we have actually cut. We demonstrate that actually in what we said there, and also just in terms of our reprioritization of where we actually put money, we actually looked at every program to see whether we can actually make our budget actually at the end of the day balance. So I thought I should just give that terrain, and then Mr. Eli can maybe speak to some of the detail that has been some of the questions that the member had asked there. Mr. Eli, could I hand over to you, please?
Yeah, thank you, HOD. Just in relation to the question around independent schools, members, as you know, when we prepare the budget, we assume a particular number of learners will enter the independent school sector. And obviously, the adjustment budget then provides us opportunity to reassess that. Because also what we find, Chairperson, is that the independent school sector in some cases are also losing learners to the public ordinary schools, coming back into the public school sector. So when we shift funding away from independent schools, is that the numbers that we thought is going to join that sector, and then therefore the subsidy that we could provide is not being realized. So that obviously offers up an opportunity then to shift funding where we realize those particular savings as far as the independent schools are concerned. So they don't, there's no detriment to them. We still fund them at the required level as indicated by DBE, because there's a document that governs that as well in terms of funding. So they're not prejudiced, and it's just really it's a variable issue in terms of learner numbers. Then there's a question around the School Evaluation Authority. Yes, the School Evaluation Authority receives a budget, but for that they need to prepare a business plan. And we did not consider cutting C because they are employing people and they have provided us with a business plan. And at this stage, there's no need to cut their budgets in that regard. Then, Chairperson, the member asked around page 72 around the realignment of learner transport. Just to say, first of all, it's a technical adjustment. So it's a classification between two SCOA items, we can call it that. So just to explain to you the underlying reason for that, we have learner transport schemes, but then sometimes we get requests from schools to do the transport themselves. It's what we call devolve routes. And in that particular case, we have to shift the funding from goods and services to non-profit institutions where we transfer that money to schools to effect that particular transport scheme there as well. Then in terms of the question around the 50 million rand for the MOT infrastructure, where we use that for ICS, Chairperson, that funding, it's a transversal strategy in the province. As far as MOT infrastructure is concerned, and then also the feeding part, we've transferred that to, we transferred the equipment part to DCAS. But in this particular case, the ability to spend on this infrastructure was indicated to us that there's no projects yet that's in flight. And so we then took the decision not to spend any money. This is over and above infrastructure that we already earmarked for public ordinary schools, where we're going to build new schools or expansions, etc. So the mod infrastructure has got to do with the sports aspect around the transversal strategy in the province as well. So it does not impact public ordinary schools as far as learner placement is concerned, if I might put it that way as well. Yes, Chairperson, and the other question is, did we consider BOT? Just to indicate, I mean, we've cut BOT as far as last year already, as far as part of the 2.5 billion rand cut that we did last year. And for the current year, because of the pressure, we had to cut BOT by another 55 million rand as well. So yeah, that program is and we're quite happy that the program achieves its objectives for the current calendar year. And there were also efficiencies that was realized there as well, Chairperson. So we were able to take that money away from the BOT program there as well. And then the BOT budget for the current year adjustment budget is 248 million rand in terms of what the member was asking. Then, Chairperson, there were some questions around LTS again. Just to say that the entry that the member was looking at, we have experienced for the current year, we are experiencing budget pressures for learner transport to the tune of 47 million rand. And we had to find savings for that in terms of covering for that expense as well, Chairperson. So I know the member was asking about the learner transport schemes, but just to say that we are experiencing pressure in that regard because of more learners taking learner transport routes. And then also there are migration patterns within the province where learners are moving from one town to the other. And that puts strain on the transport schemes as well. So we are experiencing pressure in that regard there as well. And then also the question around the leases, we are also experiencing budget pressure on leases as well. So we had to cover that in the adjustment budget through our improvisation to make sure that we can still cover in budget around leases as well. Chairperson, that's it from my side. If there are any more questions, I'm welcome to respond to those questions. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eli, and the team for answers there. I'm going to be handing over to Honourable Aaron for the next question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the responses to the questions. I want to pick up on Honourable Windvogtel's question around teacher cuts and the cost of employment pressures. I think my first question in response to the HOD, who rightfully said there was an 80% increase, and obviously that there's an increase in 80% was not covered. I think that's what he said, or there was no funds for it. I think the question is, the increases that he's talking about are for which financial years, and when did he become aware? When did the department become aware of these salary increases that continue to put pressure on the current budget? If my second question is, if I understand the pressures that the department was under, and which led to the decision to cut 2,407 teachers. In the current financial year, there was a shortfall initially of 687.5 million. This was reduced, according to the Minister of Finance's speech, to 405.8 million. I guess my question is the shortfall in the current financial year now covered? So the shortfall is now covered to the end of March. And then a third question, just also as raised by Member Windvogel, around learner transport funding. At the point when the teacher cuts were announced, the minister said that the department wanted to protect learner transport and learner nutrition schemes. But you know, I was just at a meeting in the Winelands last night where learners have been, where parents are complaining about the removal or the withdrawal of learner transport services in the Tilbach area in particular. So why is there a mid-year withdrawal of learner transport if the priority was to save learner transport really at the expense of teacher posts? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can we?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mr. Eli will also answer, but I just want to maybe just deal with the transport issue because the detail of that answer, we have actually spoken about how we get to learner transport routes, but I do want to point out to the committee that we don't just give a route. People have to qualify for the route. It's based on distance and a whole lot of other factors as to whether they qualify. Now, in some of the routes, what we found is that the school applied for additional learners to be transported. And only some of those learners who applied qualified. So in terms of our transport policy, we communicated that to the school at the end of May. And we asked the school to communicate that decision at the end of May to parents. But we didn't just leave that there, Chairperson. What we also did is we provided forms or applications for either transport subsidy or hostel subsidies as alternatives for learners. But to date, since May, we have not received any applications for those. And so what we will do, since it has been raised here, what we will do is we will follow up with the school itself to basically just see, you know, whether there aren't learners who can actually do this. I think the dilemma for us is, and I think the committee members will appreciate this, we have to draw a line somewhere because we do not have an infinite budget. So wherever we draw that line, we have conditions under which people qualify or don't qualify. And over time, sometimes people qualified in the beginning, and over time, through circumstances and other things, they don't qualify. You know, if we decide, I'm just going to say, for example, if we decide that distance is an issue, and a child is just within that or outside of that, and the person doesn't qualify, obviously it becomes problematic. So I think that's what we'll find with it, with these situations, Chair. We do have to draw a line somewhere. And when you draw that line, there are going to be some children who actually miss out. And the difficulty that we have is when we start making exceptions, what we have to guard against because of the size of our budget and the nature of our organization, exceptions are difficult to deal with because when you try and make them the rule, they can overwhelm your budget in terms of where we're going. So I just wanted to perhaps make that point. And the second point I just wanted to make just in terms of the questions about the, maybe just a misunderstanding, Member Aaron. What I was trying to say is that of our budget of 100%, what we're tending towards now is spending 80% of the budget on COE. Now, why that becomes a very dangerous thing to do is firstly, the National Minister of Education in 2007 in the Government Gazette, and we can provide the number of the Gazette, I don't have it at hand here now, Chair, basically indicated that the almost outer limit of how education department should spend its budget is a maximum 80% on COE and 20% to actually operate. What you find if you cross that threshold is that eventually you get to a point where you're actually paying teachers, but then you can't fund anything else. So all your other programs start to suffer. And then it's a downward spiral from there. So try to explain that to say that we don't want to get to that point. We're on the 80%. So we just make it. We haven't defied any government gazette by going over the 80%. But besides the fact of what's written in the government gazette, just from a management point of view, if you are trying to run a system that is COE heavy, which is ours, you have to keep money for other things. Otherwise, you can't actually operate the system. And, you know, if we look across South Africa, there are many provinces that have gone over the 80% and has compromised their services in some ways. So I just wanted to perhaps just mention that, Chair, so that we can get a context. Now, the question of when did we become aware of the budget? Obviously, the first, as an accounting officer, the first signal to us that there is an issue came in the previous financial year. Because in the previous financial year, Chairperson, the budget was cut in year. In the limited experience of officials who have been in the system long, we can't really remember any case where that actually has happened. What normally would happen is you basically get a budget over 3 years, and then generally as finances improve, as you get closer to that second year, they will say, well, okay, we're going to give you 10 Rand, but now we're going to give you 10 Rand 50. But what happened in the previous financial year is that in the year we were in, they said, okay, you have 10, we thought you had 10 Rand, but actually you only got 950. For a big organization like ours, that is a shock to the system. We started speaking with all our partners, SGP associations, unions and others, to indicate to them that when you look at education as a big ship, they need to understand it will have an impact eventually. And what we see is to exacerbate that cut. When we went to the next financial year, an increase was given that was not fully funded. When you take those two factors together and combine them, you've got a situation where something has to give. And unfortunately, we'll end up in a position where we have to cut those 2,407 posts. Obviously, there's a process around that, as I'm sure the members are aware, but I do want to assure the committee that that is not a decision that we took very lightly. So it's balancing the needs of the education sector against the duties and responsibilities, fiduciary responsibilities of us as myself as the accounting officer, but us as guardians of the system and guardians of the money and how we spend the resources. So I'm going to ask Mr. Eli if he wishes to add to any of my answers, just in terms of the questions that were asked. Thank you, Mr. Eli.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Just a question about the member around the 405.8 million Rand, whether that's covered. Yes, with the assistance of 250 million Rand allocation from PT, Provincial Treasury, and also within our own budget reprioritization exercise, we are covered for the year under review as far as the adjustment budget is concerned. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you there to the officials for those explanations. I see Member Heron's hand is up, and I'm just looking through where we are in terms of the various pages. So I'm just looking to see if we have, other than the hands of members Heron and Windvoertel, whether that then covers us up to page 79. If everybody is fine with that, then we'll try and deal with all of the questions from there, and then after that we'll move to pages from page 80 onwards. I'm handing over to you, Member Heron, and then Member Windvoertel.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for those answers. I'm still trying to understand the cost of employment pressures that we keep hearing about arose out of the unexpectedly high salary increase that was a result of the bargaining process, if I understand it correctly. And that would have happened, that would be the 7.5% increase in the 2023-2024 financial year. I guess that why I'm asking this question is that the pressure that we are continuing to experience, or is it the 4.7% increase in 2024-2025? Then I guess my question is, we tabled a budget in March 2024, which indicates an increase in the number of employees and accommodates the 4.7% salary increase, and makes no reference to having to cut 2,407 teachers. So if we knew about the salary increase in the previous financial year, how did we table a budget in March 2024 that is balanced, that provides for an increase in the number of employees in the public ordinary school vote. And then 6 months later, we suddenly become aware that we are underfunded. That's my first follow-up question. Then if I may just go to the learner transport and make a request to the department. As I said, I met with parents in Winelands last night. I hear the answer about the distance, but in some instances, we're talking about 7-year-old children walking 4.8 kilometers to get to school and 4.8 kilometers to get home. And I don't think the minister, I don't think a HOD or any serious adult would like a child of that age to be forced to walk to school. What the parents also told me is that their children are now giving up school and are becoming farm workers at the age of 12, 13, 14. They also are threatening to not let any school in the Witzenberg area open in January. So my plea is that the department engage with that community. My understanding from the parents, it may be true or not, that the district director is not accessible or available to meet with them, even when they went to the head office or the district office in Worcester. The official would not come out and meet with them. But can there just be an engagement with the community around the learner transport issue, especially I think because there's a lack of integration between what the housing department or branch is doing and what the school department, the education department is doing. A B&G housing project was built, the people were placed there, but there are no schools, so they're forced to walk or to get learner transport in order to access the nearest school. So I met with the community, but I don't have the answers for them. All I can do is raise questions in this committee like I'm doing now. But I really urge the HOD to instruct or to encourage that there's an engagement with the community here, because there's a lot of anger and we certainly don't want to see the school year start with parents threatening to close schools. If I can just leave those two questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Member Provincial, your questions.
Thank you so much, Chair, and also want to thank the department for answering some of my questions, of most of my questions. Chair, I think Member Herron has touched on the learner transport issue, and I want to caution the department that we really need to be proactive and not wait up until something big happens. So I urge them really to engage those communities when it comes to learner transport. And it's unacceptable that we are really not serving our poor communities. Then, Chair, on the issue of the post, I would like the head of the department to clarify whether the proposed budget will effectively address the issue at hand. Specifically, will it mitigate the needs for the post cuts? Because you just need to give me a straight answer, not come and tell me you will not deliberate on this issue. Because where I'm coming from, or where I'm sitting, and with my engagement with community schools, school governing bodies, the feeling is that it was reckless and an attack on the poor. So I really want a straight answer from you or from the minister. Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Member Provincial. I'm going to hand over to Minister and HOD, perhaps to try and deal with those issues right now. You can go ahead, thanks.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me just say on Mr. Member Heron's question, certainly we'll follow up with the community, and I think Member Van Foucault has also asked that we follow up, that we basically there's a community that is unhappy. And Member Heron has spoken about the distances and so on. We'll get our officials to follow up, and we'll get the district to actually engage with that community. So thank you for bringing that matter to our attention in relation to the way in which you have brought it to our attention. I do agree that we do need to engage. I do want to say, Chairperson, There is obviously a limit that we would have to set. And the difficulty that we have, and I'm asking the committee to try and understand our difficulty as officials. The difficulty that we have is we set a hard line on a certain distance, let's say, and maybe age and how people qualify and so on. If we start making exceptions for that, then the question we have to ask ourselves, how does it affect all other communities? And if we make an exception and other communities come to us, will we have the resources to be able to actually execute it? I think that's just our dilemma, but that's a dilemma the department must sit with. I'm just trying to explain because the members asked, but I do want to thank them for actually raising the issue, and we will actually go into the community and just try and see, let our people speak with people and just try and reach some level of agreement. Then, Chairperson, let me state it clearly. What we're doing here is just making sure we can survive the year. We had a 405 million deficit, and we're trying to survive the year. Given the fact that an increase has been voted, which is not fully funded. 64% of the money was given to us through a process. So it's that differential of 36%. And if you look at our size as a department, to understand the numbers of people we actually employ, then this adjustment is not going to affect the decision to cut the 2,407 posts. I just wanted to make that clear because the chairperson asked me to make it clear. So I'm going to ask Mr. Eli if he can perhaps just add to anything that I may have left out from the last two inputs. Thank you, Mr. Eli. Is there anything else, Mr. Eli?
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. Just in request, Mr. Heron's question around the tabling of the budgets. I think that we need to understand we're talking about two different financial years here. So the basket, or the cut in the basket relates to the 2025-2026 financial year. It does have an impact on the current year because there's a difference between a school year, which is a calendar year, and a financial year, and that's your January to March issue. So when we tabled the budget in March this year, that was based on an allocation we got from our provincial treasury, obviously in relation to national treasury, and that's the figure we were working on. Obviously, the outer years the understanding is always those are indicative figures, and that's the figures we use. Obviously, we'll have to go through the next budget stage where I would imagine in February next year, we'll receive our final allocation letter. But just to say that, Chairperson, we mustn't confuse the two financial years, and the tabling of the March budget in the current year, in March 2024, with the basket exercise, because the basket deals with the next financial year, the 2025-2026 financial year. And so it's just something we have to be cautioned about. If we have to elaborate and explain it more broadly, Chairperson, I'm welcome to do that. But I'm just cautioning members not to conflate the issues around the current budget and the current shortfall and the decision around the basket post, which comes into effect in the 2025-2026 financial year. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eli. I think what members should also just note that on page 81 in the bottom right-hand corner, we have the total expenditure for the 23-24 year, which is at 30.384 rounded to that decimal point. And what we now have is 31.397. Now that reflects an increase of 3.33%. And that is after the adjustments that we are dealing with now. And that adjustment of 547 that we have has in fact contributed 1.77% compared to the 3.33. So I think this should also then just place in context the tightness and the difficulties that the department is experiencing in trying to balance themselves out. So I think if what I'm now also just wanting to cover in this next round is to deal with any questions that are from pages 80, 81, 82, 83, and up to 84. So that is before we go to Annexure A, because Annexure A sort of supports what is being done up to page 84. So I think if we can possibly move to a last round of questions right now on that, and I see Member Heron's hand appears to be the only hand that is up right now. Thank you. You can go ahead, Member Heron.
Thank you, Chair. If I just can get clarity from in response to Mr. Eli's reply to my question. I still don't understand. We adopted a budget in March, and what changed between March and August that led to a 687 million rand shortfall. So I accept that the budget that was adopted in March deals with the in-year allocations and the basket of posters for the next financial year. But there is still a 687 million rand shortfall, which is not indicated in the original budget adopted in March. So what changed between March and August that suddenly we have a 687 million rand shortfall? Thank you.
Handing over to Minister and HOD.
Mr. Eli.
No, thank you, HOD, and thank you, Chairperson. I think my HOD has covered the question quite substantially. Just to say, in terms of Mr. Heron's question around what has changed between March and in August, nothing really substantially. What I mean by that is my HOD has indicated that we were only funded 64% by National Treasury in relation to the salary increases, and that carries through over the MTEC. And again, I'm just going to re-emphasize what my HOD has said. Last year, around the adjustment budget, there was, and it was countrywide, there was austere measures that was implemented by National Treasury where all departments were cut. And then there was some decision made to cover education and health to some extent. And I think there was another national department that was covered, but it was not fully covered, Chairperson. And so that deficit, because you're sitting with the same personnel, that deficit then carries through. And then, as my HOD has said, at some stage, you have to make another decision to deal with that particular shortfall. So for this year, that shortfall is the 687. But in the following year, that shortfall grows again if you're going to keep the same staff establishment. And therefore, the department had to take mitigating steps to make sure we don't overspend substantially, because we won't be able then to do what we did this year. Look at the budget, get funding from Provincial Treasury, in this particular case, 250 million rand, and then reprioritize from our own budget. We won't be able to do that in the following year, given the extent of that particular potential deficit we will face if we carry on like this. So just to say, what my HOD has said previously around the in-year cuts, that's part of the underlying issue here, where national government has implemented austere measures. And then just to say, Chairperson, I think we also have to say this, all other education departments are facing exactly the same pressure that we are facing. They've decided particular courses of action, but this department has taken a particular decision which to make sure that we stay within the PFMA Act in terms of the rules and regulations. And unfortunately, there's a particular fallout around that as well. HOD, I'm not sure if you want to add to that as well. Thank you.
No, I think we covered, Mr. Eli, in terms of the answer.
Thank you, Mr. Eli, Mr. Walters. I see Member Heron's hand, and at the same stage, I think we now need to also table the annexures right through to page 99. So that covers this whole aspect then from pages 85 through 99. And hopefully this is your final question, Mr. Heron. Member Heron, apologies.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to be asking back and forth like this, but the answer's still not answered, or the question's not answered directly. And so I need to ask it again. We knew going into March 2024 about the 2023-2024 salary increase. We knew about the 2024-2025 salary increase that's provided for in the 2024 budget. We've just heard nothing changed since March 2024. My question is, how did we present a balanced budget in March 2024, knowing the salary increases already, and halfway through the year announced that we have a 687 million rand shortfall? That's the question that I'm not getting an answer to. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we could then just have a final attempt there to see if we can satisfy your question there. The question from Honourable Heron. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Heron and Chairperson. So I'm going to ask Mr. Eli to try and have another stab at it to give an understanding of where we are. Chairperson, I do want to indicate, we did indicate that the successive situation that happened in the previous financial year in your budget cut gave us a warning that things are not right in South Africa. It gave us that warning. And the reason why I said it gave us the warning is because in our collective experience in our heads, we can't actually remember a time where the budget was cut in here, although I am told that in 1998 a similar thing may have happened. But we couldn't, so really there was an indication that there was an issue. So then as we go to the next budget, clearly we have to project in a 3-year cycle. Now, if you combine that with the fact that we didn't actually receive all the money we were supposed to receive to be able to fund the salary increase, then that becomes the trigger. So I'm just going to ask Mr. Eli if he can maybe just add. If he can add, please. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come in here just before the question is answered by Mr. Eli?
Go ahead, Member.
I've just heard the HOD, again, talk about the in-year cuts and the disaster in South Africa. But I think my question is about presenting a budget in a blue book, tabled in Parliament, adopted by Parliament, that doesn't show a shortfall in the 2024-2025 financial year. And telling me that South Africa has got a problem and that there's fiscal constraints and hasn't had an in-year cut since 1998 doesn't assist. I want to understand how you tabled something in Parliament, adopted by Parliament, that doesn't illustrate or demonstrate or disclose that there's a shortfall in the in-year budget. Thank you.
Thanks, Member Heron.
Chairperson.
Can I enter Mr. Eli, please, Chairperson? Thank you.
Chair.
Are there?
Agreed. Mr. Eli will take another stab at replying to the question. Also, there is an option if Mr. Heron is amenable for him to write to me just to broadly put out his question, and we can also supply him with a response in writing. He is not satisfied with the details provided. Also, as the head of department has said, we'd be very happy for the department to engage with the community. If you could also just furnish us with any details of the community that we might need, that we might require, so that we can get that engagement moving as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I think that's possibly a way forward there for Member Heron then to address that directly then to Minister and try and deal with that. And I think what is obviously important too is on this whole aspect of learner transport, that gets brought to the attention of the department as soon as possible. And I think we are all looking to the new school year starting not so far away at this stage, and that we try and deal with that. Just a member Windvogel, I think if that is the last question, I'm also very mindful that we do have the public here, and we as a committee need to wrap up our meeting by 11:15. And I see Member Boyson there, who will then, that is the final hand that we have. Member Windvogel.
Yeah, Chair, mine is not a new question. I just need to zoom into the question of a Member Heron. I don't think it's only a Member Heron question. It needs to, whoever is going to engage Member Heron needs to engage the committee. So it's not a Member Heron issue or question. So because I also want to understand how did it happen that we adopt a budget, but there is a shortfall. So I really want you to the proposal from the minister or yourself as a chairperson to also include the committee when it comes to this issue. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I think we could do that with pleasure and handle it that way, so that the entire committee has gained an understanding. Member Boyson.
Chairperson, thank you, and Chairperson, for the sake of time and the outstanding matters, my proposal would be, Chairperson, when we deal with recommendations, we can then bring that into the recommendations so that that can come back to the committee as a whole. Any outstanding matters that is pertained to vote 5. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Member Boyson, for that. And yes, I think that we will certainly deal with that. And I think as committee, we are very well aware that any increase in a salary of 1% is the equivalent of 250 million rand in a department of this nature. So it is, it is obviously of concern to the committee as well that the level of funding that the Department of Education receives is it's very, very tight that we're dealing with. Member Heron, hopefully you are happy that we can deal with this matter through committee then.
Chairperson, thank you. Look, I'm not a member of this committee. I welcome the Minister's invitation to ask a question, but I did ask this question to him. He replied on the 7th of October, but didn't address the question that I keep asking. How did you adopt a budget that's balanced in March 2024, knowing about all these increases, and then have a shortfall halfway through the financial year? And can Mr. Eli just answer that question? I will also pass on the information of the community who needs to be engaged with. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Heron. Yes, I think if there's any question that that you still have, please you can direct it to myself or to the procedural officer, and then we will just make sure that that gets channeled to the department so that we as members can gain greater insight into these issues. Are there any comments there from department at this stage?
Chairperson?
Yes.
It's just in terms of question of Mr. Heron around the tabling. I think I at least explained just in terms of budget processes. Obviously, the budget gets prepared based on particular assumptions. Just to say that the department's mitigation for that intended shortfall was to look at the way we operate in terms of personnel. And so we instituted what is called the famous Circular 34, where we've tried to look at relief teachers and substitutes and so forth to try and limit the particular operations around that to effect the savings that we were going to get. Well, we were hoping to get those savings. Unfortunately, through our stakeholder pressure and pressure from the school system, that was not realized. And so the plans we had and all the intentions did not materialize. And so that pressure then still sat in the system. And so I just want to say that when we tabled the budget in March 2024, that was our intention and our plans to deal with that particular deficit. So I'm just going to make it clear, Chairperson, that we didn't table a budget that wasn't credible. It had particular assumptions that was driving that particular budget when we tabled it. And one of those assumptions is we will institute measures on a compensation budget that could yield us the savings, and there we would have broken even. But again, we did not realize those particular savings that we envisaged. And so hence we now got funding from PT, and we had to reprioritize within our budget from non-personnel to take care of the particular pressure that we've disclosed to the committee today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eli. I'm at this stage, I am taking the documents that before us that are come in terms of the adjusted estimates of provincial revenue and expenditure, the budget here for 2024 that we've had from pages 69 through to pages 99, that has now been tabled and that we've dealt with all questions. I would now like to move to any questions from the public. I am aware that Equal Education has put forward a presentation, and I think just because we are unfortunately running out of time, I think if you could perhaps just confine your remarks to 5 minutes, as we already have the documentation that has been circulated to committee so that we can just deal with that matter, please.
Thank you, Chair and members. I think there's a lot of criticisms or ways that we could improve the public engagement and make it substantial. I don't think 5 minutes is sufficient. There were other areas which I'll address to the committee in writing. I'll try and be as brief as possible. I just want to see if members can see my slides.
Yes, we can see your slides, yes.
Thanks, members. I think you are familiar with Equal Education, a social movement primarily of learners, and Equal Education Law Centre, a public interest law centre specializing in education law. And Parliament's duty to amend or revise the budget, I just think it's worth emphasizing that the budget is a piece of law and should abide by sort of constitutional imperatives. including the right to basic education, which is an immediately realizable right, and the principle of non-retrogression, and in particular, the teacher cuts will retrogress on people's right to education, but also scholar transport issues as well. And I think that's probably the main message that I want to table for this adjustment budget. We know that there's various figures of budget pressures that were given around cost of employees, and if you include learner growth, so depending on which numbers you accept from the department, there's various ones were given, between 455 or 907 million. And we know there's been a net increase of 547 million, as well as unearmarked funds for infrastructure. I think it's very reasonable for this committee to say there is space to protect the posts for 2024-25 by changing the appropriations, amending them to protect teacher posts. We did ask the WCED to provide us with a list of schools that are affected, and unfortunately, they did not respond to us. But so we looked at the 2023 Education and Management Information Systems data, and we looked at the schools that are closest to the 1 to 40 learner education ratio. Of the 100 schools that are most at risk, 84% of those are no-fee schools. And the WCED did say that the number of schools that will exceed this ratio next year will increase from 66 to 150. So it's more than likely that those most at risk will be no-fee schools, and this is an extreme area of concern. The committee should really seriously consider changing the priorities in the current appropriation to save these teacher posts and to safeguard the right to basic education. The budgetary challenges are many. They've been spoken to about this committee quite often. I just want to say that some of the reprioritization and cuts that were presented to the National Assembly and Parliament are different to those tabled in the adjustments. So especially cuts to administration, school of choice, back on track, and infrastructure maintenance. Various figures were presented to the National Assembly, but in the current adjustments appropriation bill, those cuts have somewhat been reduced. So they're not as heavy as they were initially planned or announced. But unfortunately, teacher cuts remain at 2,407. So we really against this and not happy about it, and think that more should be done to prioritize teacher posts as they are the backbone of the education system. But looking into the long term, we understand. Okay, we agree that the root cause of the problem is National Treasury, and everything should be done to get more money into education into all provinces. But within the province's overall budget, there's also a significant scope to protect education spending. We know that the average across other provinces of how much of their provincial equitable share revenue that they allocate to education is 47%. In the Western Cape, that's only 44%. Also, looking at provincial equitable share revenue, the average spent per child, eligible child, of 5 to 17 is 20,200 Rand, and in the Western Cape, it's far below that. And National Treasury has been using this when we asked them to increase allocations to education to protect teachers. They say no, it's something that the provinces have done, brought about themselves. So unless substantial changes are made to appropriately allocate the provincial equitable share so that education gets what the education component is, 48% and not 44%, National Treasury is unlikely to fund education any further, or this province any further, and these budget cuts then become inevitable. And there's lots of politicking and finger pointing between these various spheres of government, but we need to highlight that this comes at the cost of teachers' lives and at learners' livelihoods, and that's simply unacceptable. So the budget, both provincially as a whole should prioritize education better, but also these specific adjustments should protect teacher posts. Then, as we know, the Bella Bill has made grade R compulsory, and not enough funding has been given to address these shortfalls as well. So we are concerned about this. We know early childhood development is very useful and important investment, and protects the rights to education, especially, and it's now a legal obligation under the Bella Act, and so there should be scope or efforts made to increase allocations for grade R specifically, and allow universal access to grade R at public ordinary schools.
Thank you.
Especially
Could you
since
wrap up? I think the
okay, I've got this last slide, but yeah, especially just want to highlight. Sorry, I forgot that point. Inequitable spending. In the World Bank report, you guys are spending more on rich schools in fee charging schools in high schools than you are on no fee schools and their wage bill, and that's unacceptable. It's regressive. This needs to change. The policy needs to change, and then also the budget documents under donor funding and public-private partnerships, because of the intricacies involved, they don't reflect the donor funding that the education department receives or the public-private partnerships receive. So the framework should be adjusted to increase transparency and accountability and guard against risks, including corruption. And then, yeah, the recommendations, I've all included them. So you guys can have a look. But the main thing is to save teacher posts and to revise the provincial equitable share allocation to education.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think members of this committee are also very concerned about the amount of funding that is available to the education department. And I think we would all like to see a more a system that is possibly a little bit more fair in dealing with this, and I think that are the objectives that all of us have. But we sit at present with an adjustment appropriation bill where there is an extremely limited space to maneuver, and this is one of the difficulties that we now have. I would thank you for your presentation, and certainly in the deliberations going forward into the new year and into the new budget, you are certainly also welcome there to make presentations. I think we now need to move to closing remarks, and I would like to invite the MEC and the HOD for any closing remarks that they may have. And ultimately, thank you for being with the committee today and in adding the explanations that you have to the various questions in trying to deal with the additional sum of 547 million rand that we have obtained. I'm handing over to you, Minister Mania.
Thank you, Chairperson. Any closing remarks from the department?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Maybe just from our side to just thank the committee once again for the spirit of engagement with us. We do face difficulties as a department. We are trying to do the best that we know how, based on our collective knowledge and with all the inputs coming from all over. And at the end, we have to make decisions that sometimes don't also find favor. But at this point, Chair, this is what we have come up with in terms of the system. We have prepared the system, and I do want to thank the committee for listening to our explanations and for having this opportunity to explain our adjustment budget. Thank you very much. You can hand back to the Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. From my part, to the committee for the opportunity to present. Thank you for the questions. We will, of course, provide the committee with the various follow-up documents based on the questions put by members of the committee.
Thank you. Thank you very much to you, Minister, and to HOD for participation and for your explanations. It is much appreciated, and I think at this stage we are then happy that you may leave the meeting then, and that as well as the members of the public, and then committee will then deal with the various resolutions and recommendations that we need to make, and to try and wrap that up within the next 5 minutes. So thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Chair and members. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair and members. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair and members.
Yes, thanks to committee for your participation that we have there. We now need to move to the various resolutions in a request for information and recommendations that we need to make in dealing today with the tabling and the consideration that we've had in this adjustments appropriation bill. And we therefore also need to move to the adoption of the report that we now need to conclude. So committee have handing over to you for resolutions and recommendations as such. Have we got any persons who are ready to adopt on the deliberation? I see Member Walters and then Member Kaiser-Philander.
Chair, I would like to propose that the vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Chairperson, thank you very much. I concur with the proposal made by the Honourable Walters. Thank you very much.
Okay, I see Member Windvogel. I see it looks like you've got 2 hands there, but you can go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Am I audible, Chair?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, in accordance with Rule 19, the ANC minority position is to reject this budget. Then we will request that this position be formally recorded. I thank you, Chair.
But also just moving to procedural officer, if we can move forward in terms of the adoption and reporting of today's proceedings, and the draft that is here before us, and I'm just going to read that out. That says that the report of the Standing Committee on Education on Vote 5, Education, in the schedule to the Western Cape Adjustment Appropriation Bill, within brackets B2 2024, those brackets dated 29 November 2024 as follows. The Standing Committee on Education, having deliberated on the subject of Vote 5 Education in the schedule to the Western Cape Appropriation Bill, referred to the committee in accordance with Standing Rule 188, reports that it supports the vote, and in accordance with Standing Rule 90, the African National Congress expressed their minority view to not support the vote. I think is that, does that cover us in terms of the deliberations that we've undertaken today? Trying to see somebody is speaking there. Ms. Hassan Musa.
Hi, Chair. The members of the committee has to adopt this report as read out by you, please.
Yeah, I think our members able to adopt the report as I've read out there.
Agreed to, Chair. Move that we adopt.
Thank you, Member Kaiser-Philander. I see Member Boyson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I so support the move proposed by Member Kaiser-Philander to adopt the report. I second that, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional recommendations that we wish to add? I think we have received certain requests from Member Heron to obtain a greater explanation on the adoption of the budget for 24-25 in March, and to gain a greater understanding of the shortfall experiencing the course of the year. Further, there have also been requests that wherever on the learner transport aspect, that any areas or districts that are experiencing problems, that they be communicated to the department as soon as possible. I see the hands of Member Kaiser-Philander, then Member Walters.
Apologies, Chair, that's a legacy hand.
Member Walters.
Chair, can I also suggest, look, it's implicit, but I think it would be in terms of the resolution proposed by Member Heron to also get the dates, the timelines involved there, because I think it is important for us to understand how various, call it events and occurrences, impacts on not just the budget, but the budgeting process and the information that is required to do budgeting in the provincial government. So I would suggest we just, as perhaps an additional thought, let's get timelines involved as well.
Thank you. I think just going to Ms. Hassan Musa, if you got that, and would be able then to put that into that resolution for us then.
Chair, yes, I will draft the resolutions in the minutes of the meeting and circulate it to the members. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We also need to adopt a couple of minutes, being the minutes of the meeting that was held on the 12th of November 2024, which has been flighted, and thereafter that of the 19th of November. The 12th of November, as you will recall, we had a briefing on STEMAC and the additional work that is being done in the areas of data analysis and artificial intelligence. So those minutes are before us. If we can just flight that through and call for acceptance of those minutes if they reflect the proceedings correctly.
Accept, Chair. Accept the minutes. Colin Christians.
Thank you, Member Christian. And then Member Kaiser-Philander, I imagine, is seconding that. Thank you very much. We can then move to the minutes of the 19th of November. And that is the World Bank report and the sector analysis that they undertook, where we received a briefing on that report. we can get a proposer and seconder for those minutes.
Proposed,
that we adopt.
Chairperson, questions?
Thank you, members Christians and Kaiser Philander for proposing and seconding. Thank you very much for that. I'm very mindful that we are now at 11:20 and that we have the next meeting commencing, I believe, at 11:30. So I want to thank you, committee, for this meeting. And, you know, certainly we have experienced the tough challenges that the Department of Education has had, and I want to thank you very much for the meeting and for being with us today. We therefore adjourning the meeting now at 11:20. Thank you very much.